Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we smash apart the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe into 1-minute chunks so we can analyze them in scrupulous detail. I'm Kyle Olson from the Road to Infinity podcast.
And I am Rob Cabasco, Kyle's friend with opinions.
So, as you can tell, we are not Andy and Pete.
No, we're not.
We're definitely not them. We are working with the guys from Next Reel, but we were having a podcaster-to-podcaster conversation, and they were saying how they were having difficulty with scheduling because they have so much stuff going on, and they would have to indefinitely delay their Hulk minute-by-minute podcast, and so we stepped up and said, well, what if we helped out with that? And so,
spoiler, you're stuck with us.
Yeah. So for the next 100 and whatever minutes we're going to be around talking about the minute-by-minute of the Incredible Hulk, it will be Rob and I. We've already talked to Andy and Pete a lot. It's still their show. We are just coming in as sort of guest hosts for them for this cinematic minute-by-minute podcast excursion. Obviously, things will be a little bit different. We inherited the format from them, and we're not going to do anything too radical to it, but we have our own ideas and our own ways of going about it, so we hope you'll come along with us and have a good time. We are going to be discussing 2008's The Incredible Hulk.
This is the good one.
Yeah, the good one. Yeah,
the better one.
Yeah, as opposed to the 2003 Hulk by Ang Lee, which is not as kindly regarded by fans, I would say.
Another episode at some other time.
Yeah.
You will enjoy that.
I'm sure we'll get deep into that. But
yes.
With this one, we have lots of stuff to talk about, so we're going to continue our focus on this one. So, directed by Louis Leterrier.
Nice.
I'm trying to get the nice
very
French
nice
pronunciation. Leterrier, if you're born American. We're going to talk about the first minute of the movie, which is mostly credits.
Yes.
So we start out with the Universal logo.
So Universal, I'm a big fan of motion graphics. This is the version of the Universal logo that became, first use was on Lost World Jurassic Park in 1997. So interesting, a couple things. One, you've got Jerry Goldsmith is the composer
that's right.
of the Universal fanfare, taking over from James Horner, who had done the previous one. And just, I like this one. It's very bright. Universal had been known, if you can remember the old days when it was an MCA company, that was very dark. It always had that very brooding, desolate earth look. They changed it completely with this one. It is super bright. It has the aura. The Universal is so wonderful with its two different types and the 3D font and everything else.
I forgot that it was Jurassic World, Lost World Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
That came out. Because I remember when first time I saw it, it reminded me of the Genesis planet.
Yes. Right.
Like the
right.
sort of like the light coming around it, sort of like from Star Trek, that it was when life was being created.
And this is probably, so I think this is the fifth. I think this is the fifth of these, going all the way back to Universal when they first started in 1937. You know, like I said, you've had that whole period where it was the very dark, brooding Earth. This is the really bright Earth. This one it started in 1997, goes all the way to 2012. And then the one that they're using now currently is from 2012, and that one is where they go into the whole photorealistic Earth. This is the last
Contoured.
this is the last of the animated-looking
it's a globe.
cartoony Earth globe that you get from all that.
Yeah. So why is Universal the first thing we see in this?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because Universal was the ones who created the television series of The Incredible Hulk back from 1978. Yeah, I knew it was way back in the 70s, starring Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. And so from that, which is a very successful series, actually, for a long time. And
5 years, 5 seasons.
5 seasons, that's right. And so from that, and Universal still holds the rights to, I believe it's distribution, so that anytime a Hulk movie is going to come out, they are automatically in first position to distribute it.
A solo Hulk film.
A solo Hulk film, yeah. And the character is still owned by Disney. Through Marvel
Studios,
but they're owned by that. But at this time, and even still to the time of our recording, it is the rights are still owned by. So if they want to do anything, they have to go to Universal first, and Universal has the right to say yes or no. And so they don't go to Universal because they don't want to.
And they will never. That's why there will probably never be another Hulk standalone film. And from what we've seen, there doesn't need to be.
Yeah, because they seem to be using him just fine. Like
everything's fine.
Actually, seeing Hulk in context with other heroes, I kind of like more. But we'll see. This is his obviously his big one out after the 2003 one. So we'll see how it goes. So So then the next logo we see come up then, of course, is Marvel Studios. And Marvel Studios' first film was out 1 month earlier. That was the 2008 Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau. If you'd like to know more about that, you can listen to the Marvel Movie Minute episodes about that.
Season 1.
Season 1, that's right, when they got deep on every single aspect of Iron Man. But this was Marvel Studios' second feature out, and obviously they were an independent thing, so they were following where the characters went. So in this case, the characters took them to Universal. They were at Paramount for Iron Man, and now they're at Universal there. They were Kevin Feige was already creating his stewardship of the characters and working on interconnectedness, which we'll talk about when we get deep into it towards the end of the credits, and you'll see more of that. This was billed as sort of a sequel to the 2003 Ang Lee Hulk a bit. I think it was how they sort of sold it. Even though
it's just like Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. This is what we're learning now as the soft reboot.
When you add the.
Yeah, you add a the, and maybe or we've learned from Sony has learned add an adjective.
Add an adjective.
Right, and so it's all a new thing.
It's all new.
So we have the original Marvel Studios logo, which still has actual comic panels in there. Eventually, they would once they became successful, they would abandon that. If you knew Marvel at this point as a regular consumer, as a non-geek, you knew it as the home of Spider-Man, because you'd seen this Marvel, the Marvel name, not Marvel Studios, but the Marvel name in front of all of the Spider-Man movies from Sony. Which had come out a couple of years before, but not knowing that there's a deeper roster to this. Obviously, Iron Man was still in theaters when this one came out, so this was still them building the name. And of course, then there'll be a big gap for after this point before we see the next Marvel Studios film. So after the Marvel Studios graphic, we get into the credits proper.
Universal
Marvel Studios. And then the next name that comes up that might not be as familiar is Valhalla. So a Valhalla motion pictures. Valhalla is actually from Gale Ann Hurd. Gale Ann Hurd is a very, very popular, successful producer. She's known as the first lady of sci-fi sometimes. In her list of things she's done the Terminator, The Abyss, Terminator 2. Obviously, she works with James Cameron a lot. Ghost in the Darkness, and obviously this, Tremors, Punisher. She's done a ton of stuff, and later would go on to do Walking Dead. She is the female Jerry Bruckheimer, I guess you would say. She has a taste for the genre stuff and is very, very good at her job.
A couple of interesting things too, I think, is that you immediately go to green. Green is the element. I think they've even pulled the colors, the shades of the Hulk skin.
Yep.
All the type, and it's very compact. It's very bulky. It's you already kind of feel the theme of this before you've even gone to a visual image of an actor or a scene. You've got this whole look of cellular level things and microbes, and you've just got all that going on. So I think they, boom, you're right into it. Yeah. You're right into what this movie's about.
And we're already starting to get the science as being a major part of this, because we're seeing blood traveling through veins,
capillaries, and stuff. Right.
We're seeing X-rays of skulls and things. You're getting a lot of that in all green tinted, so you're getting those two things together
right before you go into what becomes an incredible nostalgia trip.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And those are watching it thinking, hey, this seems kind of familiar, because this is an homage to the opening sequence from the Incredible Hulk television series. But that is flat out telling you the story. Dr. David Banner. But this one is sort of like letting the visuals tell the story, which is a Louis Leterrier trademark. He's a very, very visual storyteller.
Yeah, and then we go into the shots that we see Edward Norton.
Yeah, they start telling us that, now this is obviously very different than what we saw in the 2003 Hulk, which this is where we get into the soft reboot part of it, where this is not, they're not recreating scenes from that, so they're doing all new things. First name that comes up is Edward Norton. Edward Norton.
What's he doing?
So Edward Norton at the time was a very, very popular actor. He was one of those guys who was navigating between high-profile films and independent films. So he was sort of back and forth. He sort of became... I first noticed him in Primal Fear. He was fantastic in where he played. He had multiple personality. Right. Like it's Richard Gere. It's a legal thriller. But if you're a fan of Edward Norton, or you just like legal thrillers, or you like Richard Gere, I would highly recommend seeking that one out. That is a really, really good movie. He did People versus Larry Flint, he had a big role in. American History X was, I think, where he sort of made a big impact because that was where he played a penitent Nazi, I guess.
Right, correct. I mean, a very adult, very serious, hardcore role.
Yeah.
That really redefined him, I think, for a lot of people.
I think so too. And then, of course, one of my favorite films of all time, Fight Club.
Oh yeah, no.
We could do a whole thing on Fight Club.
And then he follows it up with one of my five favorite films, Keeping the Faith.
Oh, interesting.
Which is the movie that answers the question of what happens when a priest and a rabbi walk into a karaoke bar.
Let's see, then he did The Score, which is good. I love Death to Smoochie. It's one of those weird black comedies that it's not for everyone's taste. Let's see, he had done at this point Red Dragon, the sequel to prequel to Silence of the Lambs, 25th Hour, Italian Job, which was interesting because that was a contractual obligation movie for him, and he still killed it.
Really?
It was actually, we don't turn this into the Edward Norton podcast, even though we're going to be talking about Edward Norton for like 100 hours. But he had one last movie on his contract with Universal, and so they said like, "Oh, we got this movie, the Italian Job and stuff," and the bag. He's like, "Yeah, fine, whatever." Just wanted to get it out of the way. And he still
don't send the script. I'll just read it when I'm there.
Like, can I grow a goatee for it? Great, I'm in. And he's great. Like he's like a really the Italian Job could have been the Fast and Furious of its time. It just never really went anywhere beyond that. He was really, really good as a bad guy. After that, he was in Kingdom of Heaven, but of course at that time, who wasn't in Kingdom of Heaven? The Illusionist, that was another big thing that had just come out. So that was sort of what he was coming off of on that. Illusionist was another prestige movie that had a lot
I was just going to say, just like, right.
I actually did not mean to make that joke with that too, because at the same time The Illusionist came out, The Prestige was also coming out about magicians.
This was one of those weird years where you had dueling movies.
Yeah.
And he's in The Painted Veil, which I don't know anything about that movie other than my mother loves it.
Okay. All right.
That's all I know.
So Rob's mother's seal of approval.
See, there you go.
Painted Veil. So Edward Norton was kind of like a pretty big deal at this point. Like he was a bona fide movie star coming into this, and then he also was known for being highly involved in the scripts of the films, as we're going to see play out over the course of this.
Also, though, a known big Incredible Hulk fan.
Yes, true.
He was that's something that obviously...
He had talked about that,
yeah. I mean, not only was he huge, not only was he super involved and not a talented actor, but obviously very deeply involved in the filmmaking process, he really loved this character.
Yeah, and he has likened it to his generation's Hamlet. He says that every actor should have a chance to play it, and it's like that's why he doesn't feel any ownership of the role, because he feels other people should have a chance to do it. Just like from Bill Bixby to Eric Bana to him. Now, in the future, we'll see to Mark Ruffalo. He sees it as a thing that actors should take on.
Mark Ruffalo's like, wait, what?
No, I think they've actually talked about it. I mean, like, because he's very sort of zen about the whole thing. So,
interesting.
Because as we will find out that, spoiler alert, this is the only time that Edward Norton will play.
Yeah, this is it.
Bruce Banner. And Edward Norton's name is actually the only one above the title. So like that's a big thing in Hollywood, is if you're a powerful enough star, top billing,
right,
that your name goes above the title, that's a big deal. Not everybody gets that. And future Marvel things, that will not happen. The character will be the top one, because you don't see the name go above the title most of the times, except maybe in a Robert Downey Jr. case.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, very rare will that actually happen. So then we see the Incredible Hulk logo. It looks like in front of an eye.
Oh yeah, that looks like a retina.
I definitely get that idea that this is, we're looking out from the either from inside or from outside. I'm not sure.
Which makes a ton of sense though, given the role that eyes play in the Incredible Hulk.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes sense.
Okay. We get more sciencey things. We get to see more recreations of their new origin story.
And this is where the nostalgia kicks in.
Yeah.
Because this is all
the same. The beam of light on the face, the mechanical arms going in front of it. This is all straight from the 70s television show.
Even including like the MRI looking machine that's going around the place. Though the only difference here is and I think this is a big difference to make between this and the series. The series, you always got the feeling that Banner was doing this to himself in an environment he was by himself.
Yes.
He was doing something beyond what the science was going to allow.
Yeah.
This clearly shows him with people in the control room and doing stuff. So I think that's interesting to note, a little bit of a difference in the origin here that this may have just been an accident or, something like that. It isn't that the Doctor himself was stretching the
No,
rules.
it's true. Yeah, just like in this, as in the series, he is actually looking for... So he's doing something to himself. He's experimenting on himself for this thing, which is interesting because it is different from his origin in the comics, which we will talk about in a future episode. The next name that comes up in there is Liv Tyler. Now, at this point, Liv Tyler was coming off of the huge success of the Lord of the Rings series, where she played Arwen Evenstar. So she was a pretty well-known thing. Now, she has not had the easiest career. She sort of bounced around a lot of stuff that didn't end up making a lot of big success. She obviously got started doing videos for Aerosmith for obvious reasons. If you don't know what the obvious reasons are, you can look it up. But then she had had a big role in one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Empire Records.
I thought you were going to say Armageddon.
Armageddon, I think, is where it was probably the biggest thing she had done, because that's Bayhem, that's Michael Bay, that's the big thing. I love Empire Records, though. It's one of my favorite.
Empire Records.
She had done a fair amount of movies even by the time she got to Lord of the Rings.
Oh, even That Thing You Do.
That Thing You Do. Oh, yeah, that was Tom Hanks directed. That Thing You Do was great. She had a big role in Jersey Girl. But then a bunch of other movies that, as you look at her IMDb, you've never heard of before. So she did a lot of independent stuff, which is, you gotta pay your dues,
right?
And that's what you have to do. Even if you're Hollywood royalty, you still got to pay your dues. So she comes this and there. So obviously she's second name. So she had some pretty good star power coming into this as well. So we're going to see her as Betty Ross over the course of the rest of the movie. And then we get one more quick shot of Dr. Banner experimenting on himself, and that's the end of the minute.
And it's very clear. I mean, this is getting really close to the original 70s show.
Yeah.
He's got the chin strap.
Yep.
You can go to the next step of
exactly.
gamma radiation overload.
That's right. All right, that pretty much brings us to the end of the minute.
How can there be this much?
I know, just in a
60
single
seconds,
minute, right?
And the beginning
of a long, long journey. There's plenty more things we can talk about, and we will get to all of them. But I think that pretty much covers what we want to do for the first minute of Incredible Hulk. So, as I always say, like, subscribe, do all the things. You can also join us over in our Discord chat room if you head to thenextreel.com and follow the link. We will be back to talk about minute 2 of Incredible Hulk. So I hope you had a smashing good time, and we will see you next time, true believers.
Hulk smash!